Some conversations will be mind-blowing and you'll sit there and you'll have the most profound change. Hello.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, thank you. Are you nice and warm?
I am. Is it chilly there?
It's freezing. I'm like, come on, weather. It's been very British. Which means we've had glorious sunshine and then thunder, lightning, rain, hail, and then it's like, oh, it's really warm again. What's that doing? But there you go. It is what it is, right? It is what it is. Just kind of dealing with it. So what we'll do, because we started on the wedding and weather, and I don't want to include that, I'll just say, hey, it's 52 conversations. I've got Gabby with me, and we'll go from that in a minute if that's cool with you.
Sounds
Are
good.
you open to talking about whatever comes up?
Yep.
Because there shouldn't be anything untoward.
Yes.
Cool. There you go. So welcome to 52 Conversations, and thanks for taking the time out to speak with me. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm cool. I'm cooler than you are because you're in the sun in the West Indies and I'm back in the UK. So there you go. So we were trying to sort this conversation when I was out there, and that we had the issue where I was paying massive paradise tax, as I call it, which means the Wi-Fi goes or the electricity goes. So there was that big issue, but hey, in the end we are here. So I kind of wanted to invite you in really just to allow people to get to know you a little bit, how you work and what you do. So if someone says to you, what do you do? What is your answer? Because you have so many hats. So what do you normally say? What's the answer to that big question?
Goodness. Well, depends on who's asking, I guess. But in terms of, life, I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 3. But in terms of business, I am a copywriter, which means I write the words that you see on websites, in emails, on social media captions, etc., predominantly for female service-based entrepreneurs. A lot of them are in either the fitness or health and wellness sphere. I have a few people who are in like life coaching or digital nomad businesses. But like I said, predominantly for female service-based entrepreneurs. I am their voice as much as I can be.
You make their voice more coherent for the terms of marketing, I suppose.
Exactly. Some of my clients have a really strong voice, strong presence, and it's really just a matter of they don't have the time to, devote to doing that part because they're coaching. I mean, I'm sure like you're on coaching calls with your clients and you want to pour into them. And so sitting and writing a social media caption just is not part of that, time frame that you have. And I also have other clients who are maybe still developing their message, still trying to figure out exactly who they are as an entrepreneur, who they're serving, what their audience needs to hear. And so I help them kind of fine tune, refine what they're saying, make it very clear, coherent. And then obviously in terms of, like you said, marketing and sales, making it something that, is attractive to their prospective client that makes them want to learn more or makes them want to, buy into their service or product, whatever it might be.
So to me, that seems like it must be a close relationship then, that you effectively become the voice of some of the social marketing and media. So do you have a very sort of personal, close relationship with people that you work with so that you get their vibe, literally?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I only work with clients. So I work, I might take on like a one-off project here and there if it's maybe like a sales page or something like that. But in terms of my clients that I work with long-term, we meet monthly. We talk, we meet virtually face-to-face on a monthly basis. And then we're in constant communication via email. So my goal ultimately when I'm writing is that I'm writing what they would say in the way that they would say it. So I kind of have to, put on my little hat to be this person and then take it off, take a little brain break, put on another hat, write like somebody else. Because ultimately, my goal is that It's their voice, their message, like you said, their vibe. I'm just kind of taking some of the weight off of their shoulders, maybe polishing it up just a little bit, because I do know some of the tips and tricks, in terms of marketing strategy that they may not know or may not really want to know, because they want to pour into their clients. They don't want to sit there trying to figure out how to sell things. They want to serve.
I was going to say that that's a really interesting dichotomy, because I'm one of those people who thinks generally marketing is dirty and sleazy and nasty. So it's always been this massive thing for me to go, oh no, to be like the other people. And I guess that's an interesting concept in terms of, so the industry you're talking about is very much where I'm from. And I live a lot of that stuff. And in fact, one of my great friends who's an amazing trainer for people putting their message out on video and has been for like 10, 11 years, way ahead of where we are now. And he put something yesterday about all these people that are sort of saying, oh, I'm so authentic. I'm so authentic. We're sort of sat in the back row going, yeah, that's fucking bullshit. Do you know what I mean? You're so unauthentic because you're trying so hard to be something you're not. So do you ever find that really interesting that you're working with, how to help them retain their voice yet still be palatable so that people know, oh yeah, I want to buy into that, because it's an interesting space to find yourself in?
It definitely is. And, one of my mottos is embrace your voice, upgrade your business. I'm 100% here for being who you are and authentic to who you are. I feel like I come from a mindset of there's plenty for everyone, and that the person who needs you will find you, but they're only going to find you if you speak your truth. And so trying to sound like everybody else, trying to, like you said, the used car salesman and, that sleazy vibe of sell, and all of that doesn't feel good. And people, especially nowadays, especially now, like, post COVID, we're all online, we're all on the internet more so than we were before. People are starting to be able to kind of see through that. They can definitely tell, who is being, true to themselves and who is not. And so, trying to find that perfect balance of, making sure that what is being presented online is seamless. So if you're on video, your videos sound like your captions sound like your sales page, sound like your email, and then ultimately sound like how you sound when you get on a discovery call or you get on a coaching call with your client. For me, it's really about making sure that they're being highlighted. A business owner, just a small thing. A business owner may be wanting to tell you all the features. You get a 52-page book. You get this many coaching calls. They're this long. You get this, you get that, and you're throwing all this stuff. Whereas from a copywriting perspective, I want to tell you how you're going to transform. I want you to know how you're going to feel after we go through this program, or how you're going to feel after you buy this thing, or how you're going to feel after you take this course. And so a lot of times I will use my client's voice, but steer them towards, tell your people about how they're going to feel. What's the transformation? They don't care that it's a 52 or a 55-page ebook. That doesn't matter. They want to know how they're going to change and what your program is going to do for them. So
that's really interesting, because I always say when I'm working with clients, it's the how that's interesting. I mean, the rest, what you're going to get in terms of, you're going to get this, and this, that's just stuff. But actually, it comes down to how are you going to make the change? So how did you end up doing what you do? How did this become one of the strings to your bow, so to speak, that you're passionate about? How did that happen?
Honestly, I kind of fell into it. I have a degree in a master's degree in elementary education. So I was a teacher for many years, and then I moved into an administrator's role. I was an assistant principal. And when we moved abroad, when we moved to Mexico, everything, I left my job. So everything, became create an online business. And I hired a couple of coaches who were like, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I was following them because, when you hire somebody, you tend to, look at them as being an expert, and if they're telling you what to do, you follow suit, especially when you're new to the business.
Yeah.
And, I tried a few things that, they were going okay, but I wasn't really excited about them until one of my girlfriends, who actually is in the health and wellness industry, was like, I really because we would talk all the time. I'd here and there, she'd be like, how do I say this? And I kind of reword something for her. I'd help her, like, I need to write an email to this client. I don't really know what to say. And I'd, kind of chat with her through it. And she's like, would you like to start writing for me? Because I'm kind of lost for words. I don't have time. Things are, my business is growing. And so I kind of started just writing for her, and then realized I really liked it. I took a few courses, because there is a science to, copywriting. So I, took some courses so that I could become more well-versed in it. And ironically, as I've been doing this now for, I'd say formally for like 3.5 years now, something that I realized is I actually did a lot of this when I was in my assistant principal role, because we often had to create, marketing materials. We were a small private school. We needed to, solicit fundraising, solicit donors. We needed to put together, our website, things like that. And I was often part of those projects. So even though I wasn't really doing it as a copywriter per se, it was something that I've been, doing for quite a long time. And I really love writing. I really love communicating through writing. And I really strongly believe that, there's a lot of people out there, especially women, who have a hard time really claiming their power, really speaking highly of themselves. There's this saying in the States, they talk about, have the, what do they call it? Have the audacity of a mediocre man, right? And so a mediocre man will apply for the highest, job that they're not qualified for, but, they're going to apply for that CEO role. They're just out of college, but they're going to be a CEO. Whereas, women tend to, unfortunately, and I think it's changing, but I don't know if it's society, I don't know how we've been conditioned, but tend to kind of downplay our power, downplay our strengths. We don't want to say, we're awesome at this thing, but I'll say it, you know what I'm saying? I will say it for you. I will, help you to really discover how powerful and strong you are. And instead of saying, I think I can help you with this, I think I can do that, my goal is to, no, I'm going to change your life. I'm going to give you the strategies to do X, Y, and Z, step into that. And I hope that through my writing, I'm helping them not only communicate that, but actually also believe it. I have clients who are oh my gosh, I'm amazing. Yeah, you are. You didn't know this. Yes, you are amazing. They get their work back and they're gosh, this is a really great program. Yeah, it is. Own it,
I think that's really interesting, because I think one of the things that I always think about myself is I'm oh yeah, I'm just doing my thing, and then I'll read something or I'll listen to something back that I've said or done or something I've videoed, and I'm wow, I should listen to her more often, right? She kind of knows a few things. But I think it's really cool though when we're coming from that space, and I guess maybe some of it is being really humble in terms of that we're not so up in our egos, because that's definitely something that comes in the personal development world. People are so transfixed on numbers and likes, etc., that actually then they're missing the whole point of why they started their journey, I guess. So alongside of working with all these people, this is what you're passionate about as well. So that's kind of started your coaching and your business in a different way. How has that changed over the years? And has it changed since you left Mexico and came to Antigua? What's been the things that have made you change the way that you're working?
I think just experiencing, getting older and just having more life experiences and, meeting new people and, moving abroad and living in different countries really, expands that. But, it's just I've been really blessed to work with women who are just really they're dynamic, they're powerhouses. They can do it all. And it's a shift from corporate America where, or the corporate world, I guess I should say, maybe not America specifically, because I'm sure it's the same all over, where, you're kind of taught to shrink. You're kind of taught to just stay and maintain the status quo. And there's a reason for that. They want you to play small. They don't want you asking for a raise. They don't want you trying to, move up in the company. They want to keep you, where you are. And, being able to watch, this one client in particular, my girlfriend that I started working with, watching her build her business from zero to, we're talking $500,000 a year business now. In just the span of 3 years. It's incredible to watch things like that happen. And the fact that I know that I've been a part of that to help her do that means that anyone can do it. And it makes me feel good that I can be a part of that to help her family and then ultimately help the thousands of women and men that she's helped over the course of, these past few years. So just knowing that it feels good and being able to just do that for her, and then obviously do that for my other clients and future clients as well. So
I was going to say, anyone that's listening to this that needs that help, then they'll know where to go after, won't they? So for the people that don't know anything about you, so you were born in the States, you were living in the States, and then you kind of started this shift into living in a different place, a different space. So you were in Mexico and then you were here. So do you want to give us a quick sort of what I call the quick hair version of the decisions behind leaving America? What drove you to make that decision to literally change your lifestyle?
Sure. So, backtrack. When did we get married? I don't even remember now. Almost 12 years ago. My husband and I, my mom and my dad moved to Mexico when I was really, really young. My parents were separated. My dad moved to Mexico when I was really, really young. And he always wanted us to come visit. And finally, for my 18th birthday, my mom and I went. And we absolutely loved it. Like, it made total sense. Like, I get why you stayed. Like, it's kind of like that moment.
Yeah.
And so we would visit him every single year from then on, during, spring or summer break or over Christmas, we'd go visit him. My husband came, we were dating. My husband came to visit me when I was an undergrad, and he fell in love with it. He stayed for a few weeks. He fell in love with it. We decided we wanted to get married on the beach. So we did, in Mexico. And we said to each other, like, we're going to come back here and live someday. And, we came back to Chicago, and, he got into his career. I got into my career. We started having children and, got into that 9 to 5, buy the house, buy the car, buy the, this lesson and that, and do this.
The program that we're supposed to all want to buy into, right?
Exactly. The American dream, or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
And, we were doing that for a while. And in February of 2016, and this was like always a dream, we're going to, by then my mom had also moved down there. So my mom moved to Mexico as well. So now both my parents are there. And in February of 2016, my sister, who lives in Mexico as well, called me and told me that my mom had passed away. Like, we had not been expecting that to happen. She'd been sick on and off, but that was not at all. It was very much out of the blue that she passed. And so, obviously we scrambled, got on a red eye the next morning to get down to Mexico to take care of all the arrangements. We spent about 2 weeks there. And we told ourselves when we were there, like, we have to do this now. We have to move here. Like, the goal had been to move there and be with my mom and dad. My mom isn't here anymore. My dad is. Obviously things can change in just an instant.
Just like that.
Yeah. And so we, we keep pushing this off till someday, but what is that someday? Like, what are we waiting for? What is that perfect time for anything? Yeah. So we, took care of funeral arrangements, everything, came back to the States. Then in July, all of us as a family went there, and we spent 2 weeks kind of on like a reconnaissance mission, so to speak, where we, went house hunting. Although I'd been there a lot of times before, I'd never really thought of it in terms of what would it actually be like to live here. My dad always did everything. He had electricity, he had running water, he had gas, he had this, he had groceries. I'd never actually gone to, how do I get gas for my house? How do I get electricity? How do we initiate cable? And so we went there kind of with the mindset of like, could we actually live here? Do we feel comfortable walking around at night by ourselves? Do we feel comfortable doing this or that? And we absolutely did. So we started renting a house. We found a great house. We started renting it and came back to the States and said, we're moving on October 15th. And so between July and October 15th of 2016, we just packed everything up, sold our house, sold our cars, sold most of our stuff, or gave it away, to charity, wherever, friends and family, and took our 10 suitcases and moved.
And did you, in your minds then, was this is the move forever, that there was no turning back, that you were going to leave and that was it? Do you think you had that mindset?
That's a funny one, because Vernon and I, my husband and I, will tell you two very different answers. Vernon, my husband, was very much like, we're only moving for a year. Like, he had full intentions that this is going to be a 1-year thing and we're coming back. In my mind, I was gone for pretty much ever. In my mind, like, we sold our house. Like, we sold our cars. Like, that's not a year. Like, going for a year is like you rent out your house. You don't sell your house. Like, you don't sell your car. You lend it to a friend for a few months. Like, you don't sell everything. Yeah. So he had only intended to be gone for a year. I had intended to be gone for as long as whatever. Yeah. But as we approached our year, and then our second year, and then, it was like, oh, do we stay? Do we go? What do we do? he got the job here on island. And now we're at the point where like, we're supposed to go back this summer, but we're not. I mean, like just to visit, and we're not even doing that. So, I mean, we're pretty much set on, you know, barring any personal emergencies, family emergencies, you know, et cetera, we're abroad. That is what it is.
Oh, I think we had a little blip there, and I think the Wi-Fi died for some reason, but it's back now. So basically, as far as you're concerned now, there's no going back to live in America. This is the brave new world.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, barring any, you know, personal emergencies, family emergencies, et cetera. And my husband is pretty much on board for that as well. You know, we're not sure what our children will want to do as they, you know, grow and become, you know, wanting to go to university or whatever they want to do with their lives as adults. But we're pretty set on not moving back to the United States as a permanent move.
So how different is Mexico to arriving on island in Antigua? Was that a shock, to say the least?
It was. There are some very similar things, like the pace of life is very similar, waiting in queues to go into, you know, this office or that office, never having the right paperwork, needing, you know, stamps, things like that, having to check here, having to check there. Very, very similar between Mexico and Antigua. So those things were very similar. However, when we were in Mexico, the city we lived in was a much more urban city. So we had bowling alleys and skating rinks and parks and playgrounds, especially for the kids. You know, there's, you know, not quite as much to do here in terms of kid-friendly activities, aside from learning how to play in nature, which that's really been awesome for them too, learning how to just play outside and not needing things.
Yeah.
But one big thing for me was transitioning from, we didn't have a car in our city because it was very walkable. And so we could very easily walk to the corner store. Oh, we're out of orange juice, walk to the corner. Oh, we're out of eggs, walk to the corner store. Oh, we're out of, let's go for ice cream. Let's take a walk into town. They would have live music playing in the town square on Saturday nights. So we would just for something to do, we'd go walk down, get an ice cream, sit and listen to the music, let the kids run around, and then walk home. Moving here, having to depend on a car so much, feeling kind of like separated from everything, having to kind of go further distances. That was a really big transition for me. And then of course, learning to drive on the other side. I hadn't driven for a couple of years, much less than like I had to switch. And I'm like, I can't.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because I think we become so complacent in some ways to different things. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, there. So it must have been really interesting though. So you came from this real urban sort of lifestyle where actually you had all of this social stuff, and there's loads of social stuff in Antigua, but it's not on your doorstep, right? You have to go out and find it. So when you sort of got over the driving side of things, how did you feel in general about being here versus being in Mexico? Did you spend a lot of time looking back thinking, why did we leave? Or was it never that bad?
I definitely had a transitional period. I think my first 6 months here on island was really difficult, mostly because we had gone through a really big change. Like not only did we move, but prior to that, you know, my husband had been home working with me all day long. So we were home together 24/7, the kids were home, and all of a sudden it was like we were racing him off to work and I wasn't seeing him all day. So I was like in the house by myself and I didn't really know. I'm Vernon, my husband likes to say I'm like super extroverted, but I'm really not. Like it takes, like I have to know you to really chat. And so I'm not somebody who will like go into a coffee shop and like sit down and introduce myself. I will not go to not that we can go to bars anyway, but I mean, you know, I won't go into like a social event. It takes a lot for me to like integrate myself into community. I feel like you have to do that a bit here because like you said, things are kind of far flung and there are events and activities, but you kind of have to take the initiative to immerse yourself into them.
You definitely have to go out and find them in Antigua, don't you? It's a different kind of vibe altogether.
Yeah.
And then it's how to survive the things that you're missing and create things that actually you feel the benefits of. So what do you think are the biggest benefits for you personally and the kids definitely growing up there versus if they were back in the States as an example?
Oh, wow. So too many to name. We could talk for hours about that. But, obviously one of the biggest ones for me with my children being on the younger end of being young is I definitely feel there is a level of safety here that I've not experienced elsewhere. And I actually have to kind of catch myself sometimes being concerned. Like you don't want to fall into complacency and just like let them completely run free.
Yeah.
But I also have to like sometimes let them go, like in the States, like you don't let them walk past you in a grocery aisle. Like you keep, at least I don't, like you keep them within sight. Here, it's like if we're in one of the smaller stores and the kids are like, oh, I'm gonna go get the grape, and they, go run around the thing. I know they're in the store, and I know somebody sees them, and we know, now we've started to get to know people, and there's been times where they're like, your mommy's still inside, go back inside. You know what I mean? So, that's one big thing is the safety, just independent, individual safety. Yeah. And, also just really, again, as I mentioned before, going from, being in Chicago where there's so much stuff for the kids to do, moving to where we were in Mexico where there's stuff for the kids to do, moving here where there's not as much stuff, watching them learn, like they're learning how to garden, they've built a skating ramp in the backyard out of plywood. Like they go to the beach, they take Vernon to the beach and say, get that piece of driftwood and bring it home. And they drag it across the road and they build things. They got cinder blocks. They've got like castles and things that they're like actually building, which I think is so valuable, especially now with, the advent of Roblox and all of the online games, really watching them learn how to play more creatively. I think that has been a huge benefit that I'm not sure they would have gotten as much of had we either stayed in Mexico or stayed in the States. There would have been a lot more, and there's good and bad to both. They need technology too, but I mean, it's nice to see. It's nice to see them getting creative.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance, isn't it? And I think very much talking to people that have got children and they've gone through the COVID times and all the online learning, etc. And actually the freedom to just let your kids be kids, probably like definitely someone as old as me, we were out in the fields playing, do you know what I mean? Because that's how we grew up. And it is that sense of freedom that I think actually are some of the really good things that we can bring forwards into the way that we're living our lives, and kind of think, well, do we need to be educated in the way that mainstream education is set up? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, I have quite strong thoughts around education, and I know this, my daughter's getting ready to have her first baby, so hope, we're not in that space. I know 100% if I was in a position now where I had a child that was getting ready to go to school, I wouldn't want them to go to regular school in the UK. No way, because I just think everything is set up about testing people's abilities and to try and get them to be the same type of cookie at the same time. And I'm like, but life isn't like that from when we're little to when we're grown up. We all come in different ways, don't we? What are your thoughts around the education system? I know that's a big question as well, but I just find it really interesting.
I'm with you in terms of, I definitely see, and it's funny being an educator myself, it's kind of interesting to see that. I can definitely see why the educational system is set up in that way. There's definitely reasons for it. There are benchmarks that, I agree that most of us should achieve at certain points of our lives so that we can be, fully functioning, contributory adults. However, like for Vernon and I, because we do have that education background, because we do want them to have, we kind of look at our kids as being like world citizens, global citizens. Yeah. We want to make sure that they're getting more than just what they're learning wherever they are. So like when we were in Mexico, we were giving them, they were learning a lot about Mexican culture and history, and that's wonderful. But we were also teaching them African history, we're teaching them American history, we're teaching them, what we knew and what we could find. And, with the advent of the internet, you can find so much, which is great. And then the same goes here as well. In Antigua, they're learning a lot about, Caribbean history, Antiguan history that we don't, and we're learning alongside them. They're getting questions, who was the such and such and such? I'm like, I don't know, let's Google it. So, just making sure we're really doing our best to supplement their education and encourage critical thinking, and then also really encourage them in what they're interested in. Like I have one of my daughters, she loves swimming, she loves photography. So giving her those opportunities to, get proficient in swimming, get proficient, our next step is once we can, post-COVID-ish, we get her a photography instructor who can take her. I mean, there's so many places to photograph here. Really, really nurture that. When we moved abroad initially, I was actually going to homeschool my kids. That was kind of the plan, was that I was going to homeschool them because I wanted to be able to allow them to have that freedom of learning. And, I don't think we need to be sitting in a classroom for 7 hours a day. I don't think school needs to look like it does. However, something I noticed about my kids, even just a few months they were not in school, they missed having that socialization. They missed having friends. And so while I take issue with some of the things that happen within a traditional school system anywhere in the world. This isn't about Antigua, sure. Anywhere in the world. I do see some strong benefits of being with their peers on a consistent daily basis, especially when we're in remote learning. They were miserable. We were all miserable. There were some benefits. It was nice rolling out of bed and not having to get dressed and race around and do this, but they missed their friends. Like that was the biggest thing. They were just saying, they would get off the Zoom call sometimes crying because I can see them, but I can't talk to them. They were on the screen, but they couldn't, really engage with them.
It's so hard, isn't it? How we seek to find the balance. And all the time that you've been talking, my brain is sort of saying that it's almost like you're raising free range kids. In a real free sense of mind, free spirited, and giving them the education they need, but equally knowing you and Vernon actually putting so much extra in around that's going to make them the global citizens that you want them to be, right?
That's our hope. That's our hope. We want them to have experienced as much as they can possibly experience. Like that was part of our, kind of, I don't want to say mission, but part of our reasoning for moving was, Vernon grew up in one area of Chicago, and he moved from one area of Chicago to another area of Chicago, and that was it. He went to school there. He, kind of
that was it.
This, he traveled and he knew of other places, but you grow up with this one experience. And the same with me. I grew up with this one experience over here, and really wanting our kids to really understand and know, there's different ways of doing things. There's different ways of thinking. Not one way isn't right compared to another way. You find what works for you. You find what, jives with your spirit and what, being a good person, always doing good, always, but also just because they do it like this over here doesn't, common sense isn't common. You know what I mean? It is what it is, depending on where you are, and learning to be flexible and, not just accepting, but, really understanding of that. So
it's really interesting. It was making me think. I had a friend whose sister left our little city in England a long time ago, and she went to New Zealand and had her 3 children, and then there was a family reason and they ended up coming back, and they were giving up everything, and they were like, yeah, we're going to come back. And they came back, and they literally knew as they were getting off the plane they'd made the wrong decision. But they were like, okay, we've got to try and go with it because we've done everything. We've sold everything, literally the other side of the world. We're going to do this. And their kids absolutely hated it because they were living, I can't remember exactly where they were in New Zealand, but the kids were growing up as free range kids, didn't have to wear shoes to school, that kind of lifestyle. And they were like, what do you mean we have to wear shoes and all this kind of stuff? And they said, the things that they thought that coming back to the UK was going to give them wasn't enough to compensate for what they thought they'd given up. But unless you do those experiences, you just don't know, do you?
Exactly. You're right about that.
It's like all the experiences that we do. So at some point you ended up going back to teaching as well, didn't you? Were you not working?
Yeah, I did for a spell. I took a maternity leave cover. One of the ladies at one of the schools here was having a baby. She was going back to Canada to have the baby. So she was taking, did I do 3 months? I think I did a 3-month teaching stint.
How did you find that?
It was fun. And I was actually really sad because I was finally getting in my flow. Once you've been out of something for a while, it takes you a while to kind of get back into that flow, get back into that routine. And it was over.
And then it was done.
I was finally like, okay, I got this. And then it was over. But I really enjoyed it. And it was fun because it was it was a total 180 from the teaching experience I had in the States, which I thought was really, really great. Like I would definitely go back into the classroom again here. I would never go back to the classroom in the States again. I would never, I don't want to say never, but in my brain, that's not something I want to do ever again.
I'm interested. Why did it feel so different in the classroom in Antigua versus back in the States where you'd said you wouldn't do that? What was the difference?
A few things. I mean, it could be the school that I was at here. I wasn't teaching to a test. I wasn't teaching to, and I know there are national assessments. I was not and we were actually at a national assessment year, but the focus wasn't, the focus of the school was give them the skills and the tools and the resources that they need, and they will do fine on the test, versus learn these specific facts so that they can do well on the test. And yes, we were teaching the test. Yes, I was teaching them the things that were going to be on the test, but the focus was more so on they need to learn their multiplication tables because they're going to need them at some point in their lives. And they're also on the test. So that was really nice. And then it was really nice. There was a lot more flexibility, in the classroom and how I was teaching and how I was presenting the material, which was nice. People were not coming in my classroom every other day to observe and, today's Tuesday, you should be doing this. That was nice. Parental support was excellent. Like the parents were really involved, and it was just a matter of sending a quick WhatsApp to the classroom mom, who then, kind of put the word out like, oh, we're bringing paper tomorrow. Oh, we're going to bring in, googly eyes tomorrow. Very simple. And then also just the hours, even though the school day was similar, 8 to 3 is what you get in the States. There were a lot more breaks in the day. Like one of the days I actually had like a whole 2.5 hours where I wasn't teaching, which never happens in this. You barely get lunch at some schools in the States. I had like a whole 2.5 hours. So like if I need to go, which you need because the bank closes at 2:00. So like if I needed to go to the bank or I needed to run an errand, like I could do it within that time frame without having to, find a sub or find coverage or miss out on, being with the students. So there was just a lot more kind of the whole island vibe of just being
freer within it.
Yeah, like I was treated like an adult. Like that was kind of nice. There was less
That'll be like running away. Oh, right. So the dog interlude is gone. So how did it feel when you had the structure of having to go out to work again? Did you enjoy that part of it as well, having been, at home doing whatever you were doing at home? How did that feel?
It was really tiring at first. And I got so sick, when you're around kids, and you haven't built up your immune system. So I was sick pretty consistently for the 3 months. Like I had one really bad one, and then I kind of never lost. I don't think it was COVID. I mean, now they're saying, oh, I was sick in September. So
I must have had that.
Yeah, I don't think it was, but it was just, like getting back into the flow of, I kind of got into a routine of like helping the kids get ready, and I just throw on whatever because I wasn't even getting out of the car. I was just driving. Now I actually have to look presentable, put on some real clothes, make myself a lunch, make myself, make sure my bag is packed. So I kind of like got into the routine with the kids. Like at night, we all pack our bags, and at night we all lay our clothes out, and in the morning, okay, everybody go in your rooms, get dressed. So it took a little bit, and that's what I mean. Like by the time I was finishing, I started in, I believe, October, and I finished at the end of January, right before, like a few weeks before
COVID,
everything shut down. Yeah. I was finally getting back into, the flow and the rhythm of it. And I was actually slated to come back and teach another maternity cover. I believe it was going to be like May through the end of the school year. Yeah. But because COVID hit, and the woman who was having the baby on island, she was just taking the time off. She just decided to teach from home. She took, I think, maybe a week or so off from the remote learning. And then, it's wonderful. You have a baby, you can still teach.
Absolutely. I was going to say the pluses to being a remote worker, I guess. So in terms of the time that you spent at home, how did you manage 3 children, home learning, and your own business. How did that juggle manage?
It was a lot, let me tell you. But, it had some benefits and some drawbacks. I mean, it was nice because, like, for me, the going is tiresome. So, like, getting everyone in the car, getting everybody out of the car, driving to wherever, driving back, navigating traffic, for me, like, transitions are hard. So being home actually afforded us more time because it wasn't like the herding of the cats and getting them in the car and out. So I was less tired. And so what that meant was I got up a lot earlier. So I was actually getting up earlier in the morning, getting a nice little chunk of work done before their remote learning started, which didn't start till 9 versus having to leave at 7:30, so we got like extra time in some ways. And, I just had to kind of, which this was hard. I kind of had to like put my work down and actually like help them from, when remote learning started to whenever their days ended. So that was a bit tricky because I don't homeschool them for a reason. Like I definitely I'm capable of educating people. I'm pretty good at it. I enjoy it. I don't necessarily want to do it with my own kids. And so it was kind of like getting my mind set around like, but I didn't sign up for this. Oh.
No, absolutely. This wasn't my idea.
Yeah, but thankfully Vernon's job was also, they also went remote. Their classes went remote as well. And so he was able to work from home. They actually told him, like, please work from home. If you have good enough internet at home, please don't come into the campus.
Yeah.
So he was super helpful in terms of he moved his student appointment schedule around so that he didn't meet with students until like the later in the afternoon so that we could both be on deck to, help the kids during their remote learning hours. Because when there's 3 of them and they're all on Zoom at similar times.
Insane.
It's wild. It was absolutely, and then the phones are, and you know how internet is. So we're trying to support 3 Zooms from our one internet, but then the teachers are all on their internet. So it was just, so it was good. He was really helpful. It was kind of helpful that everything shut down all at once because then we were all able to kind of put in a group effort to making it work versus having to like toe the line all by myself. So
cool. So coming out of that, do you have any realizations and changes in the way that you want to work for your own business and the way you want to work with your clients?
I have definitely, yes. So a couple of things have happened since that. Priorities have shifted, priorities have changed. I'm much more clear on the type of client that I want to work with and the type of structure that I want for that client relationship to be. I've definitely put boundaries around my time a bit better than I was before. Clients were like, oh, can we get on a call? Like, no, you can look at my calendar. My calendar has, times and your emergency is not, what's the saying? There's very specific, your emergency isn't my emergency. I can't remember what the exact words are, but, like I'm very clear, like, you set up times and deadlines. You want delivery dates, fine, but I can't pull things. It takes me just as long to do something as you sometimes, so I can't pull it out of my arm, and give it to you. So it's definitely helped me in terms of, determining who I want to work with more clearly and how I want that relationship to look, because I realize I'm doing it all for my kids. Ultimately, like the whole point of doing it is to give my kids this kind of experience, to be able to have the lifestyle and time and financial flexibility to be able to move wherever we want, whenever we want, should we decide. And I'm doing it for them. But if I'm tied to my computer screen all day, if I'm tied to client calls all day, then what am I doing with that? Like, why am I?
Absolutely. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I know 100% from my own experience of people that I've met where the story that they're setting on social media of, I live this nomadic digital lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. And actually, I'm like, yeah, and you're tied to your computer 14 hours a day. You might be doing it in a nice country, but it's 14 hours a day. So actually, I would rather be in a 9 to 5, actually, because I'll have more time for myself. And I think that's, is something someone said to me when I was coming back from Antigua. They were like, oh my God, your days are so varied every single day. I said, yeah, but that's the beauty of creating your lifestyle and the way that you choose to work. And I can pack loads of things into my day. And as long as I do the things that I need to do that pay the bills, that means I can do that. I'm going to keep doing that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's what I love about what I do in terms of copywriting, because I can do that whenever I feel like it. I may have a deadline, something's due by Friday, but I could do that at Tuesday, 4 a.m. if I want, and then I don't have to do anything else on Tuesday except sit at the beach if I choose. Or I could do it 9 to 5 on Tuesday, or I could do it Thursday morning. I mean, it's because I'm not on calls all the time. This is why I've kind of, for me personally, like, people are like, oh, coach me. I'm like, because it's like that I'm set on a schedule. Like now it's like, if the kids, I've had teacher calls, especially now with COVID, your child coughed 3 times, please come pick him up.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can't stay. Yeah,
I'll be there in 20 minutes. You know what I mean? And it's like, I can kind of just drop everything and be there for them. Or, Vernon and I want to take a morning and go grab a bite to eat, on the way into work, we can. So that's one of the things I really like about what I'm doing now, as opposed to when I first started and coaches were telling me to coach people and having to be present at specific times all the day. And like you said, you pack your day, you end up working 14, 15 hours. Yeah. And you see none of where you are.
No, and what is the point? What is the point of that? There isn't any, is there? So if people are listening to this, whether they be women or men, and they're thinking they want to make changes in their life, whether it's to follow a passion or a hobby and turn it into a business, I'm assuming that you've helped people and worked with people who've come from that space. So what would be a couple of tips for people to start their journey? Because at the end of this, I mean, this is a space for you to pitch yourself truly as well, though, because I know plenty of people out there that run their own businesses, work for themselves, and there's always this thing between working in the business and on the business, and sometimes we just need to get to that stage where we can delegate and we can let go. So I guess it's 2 questions. If someone sat there and they've got a burning desire to start this thing, turn their passion, hobby, whatever, into a kind of project and an income, do you help people get their message out from right out of the gates?
I do have some, DIY pieces. One of the things that's very important to me is, and I want to say this politically correctly, I feel like there are a lot of programs, coaches out there who will tell you need to invest $5,000 in order to get your business off the ground. I'm going to create all this stuff for you. I'm going to do all this, blah, blah, blah. That's the only way you're going to get audience. Buy an ad, buy a this, buy a that. And I'm very much against that. I very much believe that, especially at the very beginning when you're exploring, I'm very much a fan of the lean startup. And you're just discovering who you are. You're discovering who you want to serve. You're discovering how you want to serve. And so I do offer I have a copywriting shop where I have some DIY products in there that will help you create an ideal client avatar, that will help you to find your brand voice, find your message that you do on your own. Because while somebody can coach you through that and guide you through that from a business perspective, it's also something you I feel is really done well on your own. And perhaps, a consult call here and there, getting some support here and there. And so I do offer calls if somebody really, desperately wants to get on a call. I will, take coaching calls here and there. But typically in terms of, what I do, I kind of come in later on. When somebody has actually established, who they want to serve and what they want to do. Otherwise, I do have some DIY products that are, on the lower price point, because there's a lot to explore, especially when you're just starting out, that I feel needs to be done on your own, or at least with the guidance of somebody who's more on a, kind of a life coach or,
someone who understands it, is not necessarily just pushing their business, right?
Yes, exactly. Because I think a lot of people will invest in something thinking, copywriter, I'm going to hire a copywriter. And so instead of making no money, I'm going to make thousands of dollars. That's not always the case. If you don't have an audience, if you don't have a voice, if you don't know what you're doing, and who you want to do it with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, you said how you started off by helping your one friend sort of accidentally, and then it became purposeful. So now I've got a cat having a cough somewhere on the ground. It's all happening here in the pet zone. So basically, you now just work with people who you get their vibe, you understand them, and therefore you can commit fully to that experience because they get you as well.
Exactly. Thankfully my clients that I've had, I have a couple of new clients that I've gotten this year, but a majority of my clients I've worked with for at least 6 to 12 to 24 to 36 months. They're people who've been with me for a long time. And that has been really nice because it's given us an opportunity to understand how we work. It's given me an opportunity to grow with their business and their message to actually, their message has shifted since I've worked with them. And it's been a really good experience being able to work closely with, my clients. I don't have a lot of clients, and I don't have a lot of clients intentionally because I want to be able to pour into them and make sure that we're nailing it. I don't like cookie cutter stuff. I don't like copy paste stuff. Right. And I feel like that can hurt your business.
Yeah, for sure.
So, if you're hiring somebody who, I'm here for Fiverr and Upwork and all those online, quick, cheap and dirties, but when you get quick, cheap and dirty, probably somebody else has the same thing somewhere. You may not cross them, you may not interact with them ever, but likely the words you're getting are the same words that somebody else got over here, the logo or the whatever it is. So
I think it's that personal connection, isn't it, that grows. And I think anybody that really wants to be in a space and have their voice heard, doing it with someone who truly gets you makes a massive difference in the way that it comes across, and that's really important. So that's valuable stuff. So if you were going to give a few tips for people who might be listening, who run their own businesses, and a bunch of people that I know who will listen to this have been in their own businesses for years, some of them are just starting, some of them are exploring, what do you think is the most important thing that they should do first?
I think the most important thing, whether they're starting, whether you're in the midst, whether you've been doing it for years, is really being true to who you are and asking yourself with every single step that you take, is this in alignment with who I am and who I want to be? I think we get into, a lot of entrepreneurs can get into like shiny object syndrome where, they see, oh, there's a trend, everybody's doing this thing, or everybody's doing like that, or everybody's offering this. And, there is definitely, you do market research and you see, the type of clients you do want these types of services, and that's fine, but you have to do it in a way that is genuine to who you are, because otherwise it's just not going to work. It's not going to work for your clients. They're not going to get the transformation you want them to get because you're doing it inauthentically. And then in the long run, and it might work for a little while, right? It might work for a little bit, but eventually, the wheels will fall off and you will feel yucky. You will feel bad. The quality of work that you put out will start to deteriorate, and you will ultimately feel like you've lost a part of yourself. And if we're moving out of a 9-to-5 because of that, which I think a lot of people do, like they feel like their soul is being, your soul is being sucked out of your body as you're sitting there waiting for 5 o'clock to hit just because you have to sit at your desk until 5 o'clock. If that's why you're leaving, corporate to start your own thing to feel more fulfilled, if you're still doing things because you think you have to do them, you haven't really transitioned. You haven't really moved away from that. You just moved into a different place. You're just doing it for yourself. And that's almost even worse because there's no one to blame. There's nowhere to go. Like you live with yourself.
You're not being, then people aren't being congruent and ecological to themselves, are they? And I think that's a really important thing. That was a great question to ask you, because I love the way that you described that. And especially, one of the things that personally, because of the way the COVID year had been for me with my father passing and lockdowns and various things, I was kind of, in a way, I was probably disassociated from a lot of the stuff that was going on in the world in my own way, getting through what I was getting through. And then when I started coming back online and looking, and I was like, COVID created this, you can do a 2-day course and you'll be a proficient person to do X, Y, Z. I can see your face. And I was just like dying. And I have watched people that I, not necessarily, I'm thinking of someone very specific here, who I had a really healthy respect for them and what they were, which was a great yoga teacher and great with sound and voice and everything. And now they're a divorce coach. And I'm kind of like, okay. And then as I started looking, I thought, oh, wow, I see all these people that I sort of knew had a slight interest in this. And maybe they even had a business in this thing, but now they've transitioned to something completely different. And then if you actually try to backtrack, well, what's your experience of that? What's your understanding of that? What's your certification in that? Have you actually really studied this? And it's like, no, it's created these people. It was like, oh yeah, you can go online, you can do this. And it's kind of one of those things that can make you, I think, if you're a professional and you've studied and you've worked hard to do your training, we're kind of scratching our heads in some ways at these people, right? Have you noticed that as well?
Definitely. I think the internet and social media and the advent of being able to be an online whatever, it's awesome. Like, I mean, I think it's opened so many doors, so many opportunities for people, and I'm here for it. And I think there's room for everybody. But it also then requires us as consumers to really we have to be detectives. We have to do our due diligence. We have to ask for references, referrals. We have to, really understand and also go into it knowing that nobody is a miracle worker. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do your own work too. But, the magic formula doesn't come from somebody who hasn't created that formula for themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't build a 6-figure business teaching people how to build a 6-figure business. You have to have built that 6-figure business first before you teach somebody else. But that's what I see. Like, I think that maybe is similar to what you're talking about. I'm going to teach you how to get to this point that I haven't actually gotten to yet, but I'm going to get there because you're paying me to get there.
You're like, scratch my head. Exactly. I just find some of the things that have come out of this, exactly as you say, are amazing, and the possibilities are endless, except for the consumer needs to have their smarts on board, right? And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily know that. And especially, I think, if you're coming, I had a conversation not so long ago with my friend Jamie, and we were discussing how we can get more people to look at some of the stuff that we're into. So whether it be spiritualism, more esoteric stuff, holistic health, blah, blah, blah. But how can we take away the woo-woo part of it so that it sounds more mainstream so people can get it, and then people can do their research? And I think that's really important across the board in anything anyway, isn't it? So we could carry on talking, but we've been talking for nearly an hour, so I should let you go. But before that happens, do you want to tell people how they can find you? And then, I mean, when this goes out, we'll put a link with your bio and all the pages and places that they can find you. But just in case they're really into it right now, where can they come and find you?
So I'm predominantly on Instagram at the Slay at Home Mom. There's underscores between each word. And then also online, my website is my name, GabriellaMLindsay.com. So that's where I am. And if you're interested, there's on my website, there's a link to like articles I've written about, living abroad and my experience as a writer. So you can find me there.
That's awesome. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak to me.
Thanks. This was fun. I appreciate it.
Okay, cool. Have a great rest of the day in the sunshine.
Yes. You too. Stay warm.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.